In this whole back and forth between Kendrick Lamar and Drake, there have been some really good bars and really good beats and really good comebacks. And typically in a rap beef, each artist goes back and forth until one of them bows out, or until one of them makes a misstep that causes them to lose the people. And I believe that Drake made a misstep when he dropped this line.
Always rapping like you about to get the slaves free. Oh no, you didn't!
Now, for a lot of people from different cultural backgrounds, there was nothing to it. I mean, he made a reference to Kendrick Lamar pretending to follow in the footsteps of Harriet Tubman, so what's the big deal? Here's the big deal. Number one, Native Black Americans have come to a place where they don't play about slaves or slavery. And number two, one of the narratives that is being pushed in all of this beef debacle is that Drake is somehow cosplaying as culturally black. Now, I don't know Drake, so I can neither confirm nor deny these allegations, but I do believe that this is the sentiment that prompted Kendrick Lamar in his song Euphoria to tell Drake,
"We don't wanna hear you say nigga no more,"
that he doesn't want to hear him say the N-word anymore.
White boy, BBL Drizzy, I got a question.
I believe it's also why Rick Ross uses Drake's racial dichotomy to address him as
White boy, white boy.
white boy. Now, what's the significance of calling Drake white boy? Is there something wrong with being white? Is it a diss to be white? Well, there's nothing wrong with being white, but the historical record is rife with tensions between the various complexions of so-called black people. And there are instances where biracial or lighter-skinned individuals were conflicted in their identity. And there were also matters where darker-skinned individuals developed a mistrust for lighter-skinned individuals because they were mainly the ones that white people would use to infiltrate black establishments and have them act as their eyes and ears.
The name of the informant that we interviewed is Dothart Perry, also known as Ed Riggs, also known as Bill Perry, also known as Othello. He worked for the FBI as an informer who infiltrated various black organizations during the 1960s.
You know, even Chancellor Williams argued that it was their duality that played a key component in the destruction of black civilization. So when you have this as a historical backdrop, as a biracial individual, you suddenly find yourself standing behind the societal 8-ball. See, but one thing I find is that a lot of people want to rock to black American music and mimic the culture, and then they want to go home to their own reality. I mean, never really diving into the history or the majority sentiment of the people whose culture they decided to take on. So for them, when they hear serious talk about slavery or even reparations, you know, they'll tune it out and throw it out. But should any of them decide to mention slavery in a song, oh boy, see, now their words can easily be used against them, especially when the subject matter is far too sensitive for ambiguity. And let's just say Drake fell into the trap.
Oh no, you didn't!
I mean, look, when Kendrick Lamar hinted in the song Euphoria about certain individuals who copy heritage,
tell them run to America to imitate heritage. They can't imitate this violence.
or I thought to myself that this is a subject matter that Drake should stay far away from. But when Drake said what he said,
Always rapping like you about to get the slaves free.
he unintentionally opened the door for Kendrick Lamar's nuclear weapon. Not like us.
They not like us. They not like us. They not like us.
Nah, to be fair to Drake, I don't think he was trying to be disrespectful to the ancestors or the plight for recompense, but I do believe that he overestimated his liberties. Rapping like he's trying to get the slaves free. Look, considering the other side of Drake's dichotomy, it would be as if Drake said, rapping like he's trying to turn off the gas chamber.
What the hell? How many more black features till you finally feel that you're black enough?
See, Drake's dichotomy can be used against him, the same way that Illinois Congressman Bobby Rush used Barack Obama's dichotomy to point out to voters that Barack Obama was disconnected from the plight of foundational black Americans. When he tried to challenge Bobby Rush for his seat in Congress and lost in a landslide, It's the same dichotomy that was used to expose Kamala Harris by juxtaposing her track record and how she was raised next to what she claimed to be.
You ain't black.
And this is what I believe Kendrick Lamar was alluding to when he said, "We don't want to hear you say the N-word anymore." See, Drake, having been fathered by a black man, yet raised by his white mother, raises the question, when did you start saying the N-word? Were you raised in that environment? But doesn't Drake have a black father who's from Memphis, Tennessee? So doesn't that qualify or at least excuse him from scrutiny when he makes certain statements as opposed to someone who does not have FBA heritage? Unfortunately, given the legacy of relationships within the so-called black community here in America, the only saving grace to offset the dichotomy through which Drake is perceived, the dichotomy being his biracialness, is if Drake has done the work. See, he could ridicule Kendrick for coming across as someone who wants to uplift and empower black people if Drake is the one who's actually doing that work. And in my opinion, this is how Drake should have responded. Now, Drake should have led up to the mentioning of anything slaves by first identifying himself as having descended from that line. You see, because the narrative is that Drake is not who he says he is. And if Kendrick can get people to believe that, then he can seriously impact Drake's currency in the black community. It's a clever move because it's historically commonplace. The tension between the complexions in the black community. Those who were considered mulatto or biracial have a history in the United States. It is a history of separation and alienation that has caused many in black society to question the blackness of lighter-skinned individuals, even without just cause. It's also a history that has caused lighter-skinned individuals to try and blacken it up in their attitude, where they overcompensate in their theatrics in order to be perceived as authentically black. A lot of light-skinned kids, they were picked on, especially the biracial ones who had white mothers particularly, because when I was growing up, most of the white mothers that I saw had a completely different temperament from the black mothers of my community, including my own black mother. I saw white mothers in grocery stores giving their children the freedom to ask for what they wanted, and sometimes these kids would yell at their parents without getting popped in the mouth. And I was amazed by that. I mean, how is it that little Billy can just grab candy and throw it in a basket and tell his mother, "Hey, get that." And she's like, "Okay, Billy." Whereas with my black mother, she would have the pre-entrance talk with me and my brothers. I mean, she would say, "Don't touch nothing, don't look at nothing, don't ask for nothing." And we never did. But if Drake grew up with the type of mother that was typically found outside of the so-called black community, he would have a different temperament than the rest of black America, or at least a different temperament that would easily be noticed by the majority of black Americans who came from the South specifically. I mean, by Drake's own admission, he spent most of his time being raised by his mother, which if his mother is not black, then his exposure to the so-called black experience would be limited. So at one point in time in Drake's life, if someone black were to approach him and say, "God is good," then he'll reply with, "He sure is." And black people will look at him like he's crazy, until of course somebody black corrects him as to what the correct response is. And the more correct responses and tidbits about black society you learn, the more comfortable you feel moving in and out and among black society. And if Kendrick Lamar can paint Drake as a poser while marrying him to the subject that black Americans don't play about, which is slavery, and paint Drake as a colonizer, and paint him as a predator, Drake will become vulnerable, which will put his brand and his own well-being in jeopardy.
He's showing a vast knowledge and appreciation
for really just black culture while kind of painting Drake out to be someone who's only appropriated it and is a fraud.
That's right. Well, that's why Kendrick got 4 black grandparents. So when you got 4 black grandparents, that's how you move. You know, like even when he says, "Don't tell no lies about me, and I won't have to tell no truth about you." You can't even say something like that if you ain't got 4 black grandparents. Like that's old school, you know, black rhetoric. But that's what he's doing. That's why I said he can out-culture Drake because he really is a black man in America who came up in black culture. So he can out-culture Drake. He can out hip hop Drake in a lot of ways, and that is going to work to his advantage, you know, until it doesn't. That's why I'm interested to see how Drake responds.
And respond he did. But if Drake is not privy to certain aspects of black culture, then he's at a disadvantage should he ever go against someone like a Kendrick Lamar, who's well immersed and well versed in black culture. Because at the end of the day, despite all of the various cultures who have chosen to adopt hip hop as part of their lifestyle, it is still American black culture that gave hip hop its genesis. And it will be American black culture who ultimately decides who wins between Drake and Kendrick. And if Drake is still sitting in the seat of a student pertaining to the black side of his dichotomy, then he will be out of his depths when facing a formidable opponent like Kendrick, who intentionally placed a piece of bait on the subject of culture and dared Drake to take it. I mean, it was a very good rap battle with very good lyrics and well thought out metaphors and things like that. I mean, it was fairly even on both sides. That is, until Drake took the bait and consequently took the L.
Beat your ass and hide the Bible if God watching.